It was here somewhere. No, no. I knew I'd find that door.
Slits.
Oh! Ooh! That was Tonta Harrelson who invited us in. Quite a good friend of mine, actually. Here we are, in his living room. Let me show you around. This rucksack has everything you'll need to go exploring. If you click on it, then that's exactly what you'll do. If you click on this cart, I'll take you on a guided tour of the wood where the gnomes can be found. You'll see where they live and how they work and play. The tour will be just like watching television. If you click on this lantern, and then on either the cart or the rucksack, I'll explain to you how they work. The way out of the gnome's house is through the door, of course. You'll be your own size again, until the time comes for your next visit. This woodland gnome is 275 years old and in the prime of life. Gnomes can easily live to be 400 years old. Here you can see how big a gnome is. Or rather, how small he really is. Though perhaps it's just humans who are too big. You can recognize a gnome right away by his red pointed cap. He wears this all the time, so that birds of prey will not mistake him for a strange kind of mouse. The pointed cap is made from felt. It is completely solid. Gnome children are given their caps at an early age and wear them all their lives. As it wears out on the inside, it gets a new layer of felt on the outside, and so, as the gnome grows, his cap grows. The pointed cap protects the gnome's head from falling branches, acorns, and hailstones. He never takes it off. And I'll tell you why. A long time ago, So now you know. He would rather be seen with a bare bottom than be caught without his cap. Gnomes are not creatures of the day, so if you want to find one, you'll have to search at night. The gnome can forecast changes in the weather from air currents and with the help of birds. It's not clear how this is done. He doesn't like to talk about it, or else he says that it just seems to be a sixth sense, or he feels it in his bones, or he's always had the knack. What is known is that he determines the level of humidity by studying the minuscule stomata on the undersides of leaves. The gnome couldn't care less if there's rain, snow, hail, or mist. When it's very cold, he tucks his hands under his beard. And if it's icy, he puts on a pair of skates. Because he's so small, he luckily stands little chance of being struck by lightning. Storms present another danger, though. the risk of being blown away by a fierce gust of wind. Forecasting snow is very important. He must take steps to ensure that entrances and caves are not snowed up. In the mountains, he, like the animals, knows the danger of avalanches, so he's especially wary of untrodden hills of snow. It's best to stay well away from these hillsides. It's not all beer and skittles being a gnome. Some people believe that gnomes change into toadstools when they're in danger. This may well be true, but no one has ever proved it. Old oaks, or quercus as botanical gnomes say, often carry the runes of many gnomes who were born in the same year. Each year, during the midwinter solstice, the gnome visits his tree and makes a mark on it. In this way, he can tell exactly how old he is. A wild boar. People are scared to death of them, but they don't frighten gnomes, oh no. The gnome is good friends with most animals. He speaks their language and understands their problems. The animals always know where to find him when they need help, and they are always ready to lend him a hand. In gratitude for services rendered, the deer gives the gnome a potato from his food store. The gnome hates swimming more than anything else, thanks to his fear of going underwater, hydrophobia. And so, the help of an otter is always welcome. With his head high above the water, the otter enjoys acting as a ferry boat. This badger has caught his eye on a broken branch in the dark. Now the cornea is being stitched. The gnomes have known about acupuncture for thousands of years. They use needles to numb the left side of the badger's head. Deer can suffer terribly from horseflies. They lay their eggs in the deer's nose, and the larvae work their way into the throat and settle there. The gnome removes these intruders with special pincers. The gnome starts to build about 15 to 20 years before he gets married. First, he looks for a place where the lichen grows because the air is purest there. Then, he looks for a suitable tree and, with the help of a rabbit, digs an underground passage to a second tree. There, they make a hollow space, and that becomes his house. He may have to travel great distances to find a girl he likes. He does his best to win her over with lots of presents. They get married as soon as her parents agree. The wedding ceremony takes place at night at the bride's birthday tree. In the presence of their parents and a few close friends, they promise to be faithful to each other. After a reception in the new house, the young couple leave on their honeymoon. Animals take care of the journey: wild geese, swans, cranes. Foxes, otters, and even wolves in Siberia. They all do their share. When a gnome boy is 13, his father takes him out and teaches him to identify mushrooms and herbs. How to run fast, how to run in zigzags over open country, how to whistle to warn other gnomes, and how to reflect sun and moonlight to pass messages to other gnomes in times of need. In the northernmost tip of Asia, you may meet the Siberian gnome. He spends a lot of time with trolls, and so he can't really be trusted. A troll is stupid, primitive, and will believe anything. But the gnome has a great deal of trouble with him. If ever a troll should catch a gnome, then the most terrible things can happen. One of the nastiest troll tricks is called sharpening the gnome. He also likes to hold a gnome close to a flame so that he catches fire. Then he throws him to the other trolls to put the flames out. Locking him up, holding a knife to his throat, putting him in a treadmill, and making him dance on the end of a chain. In short, anything that can be invented by a diseased brain. They'll never kill a gnome, though he may be badly injured. Luckily, he's usually clever enough to escape. The snot gurgle. He stinks and dribbles, and his hair is full of lice. A gnome who falls into his hands has little chance of staying alive. Ooh. An elf is a not unpleasant, teasing ghost between 10 and 30 centimeters high. There are male, female, and neuter elves. Sometimes their teasing can have serious consequences, but the elf can never see any harm in it. For instance, they've lured this man into a swamp. Giggling can be heard from the children's bed, and the sound of snoring from their parents. There is much turning and shuffling in the vole basket as they try to get comfortable. The watch cricket chirrups happily in the hall. Everything is safe. There may be villains roaming outside. There may be storms, rain, and tempest. But a stout tree is standing above the sturdy gnome house. The watch cricket is on guard. The mole and rabbit will immediately sound the alarm if the need arises. Nothing bad can possibly happen. Sometimes a gnome family will take up residence in a windmill. The garden gnome is usually rather glum and likes to tell miserable stories. When he's had enough of the garden, he goes into the wood. But he doesn't like it there either. He's quite clever and very critical. The house gnome is used to humans and speaks our language really well. The gnome king is chosen from among their number. The dune gnome is somewhat larger than the woodland gnome. He isn't very fond of humans. He likes to settle in a pine tree or an old rabbit hole. His clothing is rather drab. The farm gnome resembles the house gnome, but is rather quieter. He doesn't like change. He can be found under a haystack, in a stable, or in a shed, or even high up in a loft, if there's danger from cats. The woodland gnome is the most common of all, but even he isn't seen very often. He likes to live under an old tree. There are lots of other places in this picture to explore. Are you going to look for them? In this house, you can get to know something of the history of the gnome. Here lives a family that have in their possession a carving of a gnome that is over 2,000 years old. These words were later carved on the figure. They mean gnome, actual size. Gnomes probably came originally from Scandinavia in northern Europe. More than 1,500 years ago, a Roman sergeant lived here, and he wrote, "Today I beheld with my own eyes a living miniature man. He was wearing a red cap and a blue shirt. He spoke our language, though some of the words were strange. He said that gnomes could be found all over our empire and beyond. But he would say nothing further about their history. This they wished to keep secret." There are lots of other places in this picture to explore. Are you going to look for them? Which way do you think you should go? It's hard to tell, isn't it? Gnomes can be found all over the world. Which country does this gnome come from? Point it out on the globe.
Yes.
This coolie gnome lives in China, in Central Asia. He's very old indeed, and lives on 2 grains of rice a day, except on his birthday, when he eats an egg roll.
Yes.
This is a Syrian gnome from the Middle East. His wife wears a veil. What a pity. You can't see how lovely she is. No, that's wrong. Try again. Let me show you where this gnome comes from. Peru lies in South America, and you'll meet this gnome there. He lives high up in the mountains, where the wind is cold and the air is thin. That's why he wears a blanket made of llama wool.
Yes.
This is a gnome from Greece. He loves to eat spinaki avcholimono, spinach with egg sauce, followed by a glass of ouzo. After that, he dances the sataki.
Yes.
This Indian gnome lives in North America, and in South America too. There were tribes of Indian gnomes in the Wild West, but they're not mentioned in a single story.
Yes.
The Scottish or Loch gnome often wears a kilt. He's very fond of a nip of whiskey. It's good for his rheumatism, he says. So it is, too. He's on very good terms with the Loch Ness Monster.
Yes.
Bushman gnomes live in Africa. Whenever he's hungry, he simply shoots some fruit down from the tree with his bow and arrow. He does this lying on his back.
Yes.
In the northernmost tip of Asia, you may meet the Siberian gnome. He spends a lot of time with trolls. In his own country, he's called Su-yu-ma. Gnomes speak their own language among themselves. A Jewish gnome can easily understand a gnome from China. Gnomes must never, ever speak their own language when people are about. That's why no one has ever heard their language. Even so, we have no difficulty talking to gnomes because they can speak our own language perfectly. The writing that goes with the gnome language is called runic script. Yes. You can stay here and carry on looking in the places you've been before, if you like. A wild boar. There are lots of other places in this picture to explore. Are you going to look for them? A gnome is blowing this ball of light from melted rock crystal. He makes many things from crystal. Lanterns, spectacles, telescopes, to name but a few. There are lots of other places in this. A gnome is